Everyone in town said the pines up here whispered secrets. But that morning, the only thing I heard was the crunch of tires on our gravel driveway, a sound that didn't belong. Amy and I had just finished the last board on our porch railing. 2 worn-out rocking chairs, mugs of coffee steaming in the cold air, the kind of peace you work years to earn. And then she appeared. She came marching up the driveway like she was invading enemy territory. A pastel pink pantsuit so stiff it could have stood up on its own, hair sprayed into a helmet that looked bulletproof. In her hand, a thick packet, stamped in bold red, "Lawsuit." Her eyes didn't wander, they scanned, calculating, judging. Her gaze lingered on my fire pit, the ring of stones I'd hauled and set myself, then on the dense woods that wrapped our cabin like a shield. "I'm Karen Goodson, president of the High Pines Homeowners Association," she announced, like a king declaring a conquest. I took a slow sip of coffee. Years of running construction crews taught me one thing. Sometimes the best way to end nonsense is to cut straight to the point. "That's nice," I said. "This is my property. What can I do for you?" She smiled. But it wasn't a smile. It was a warning. "Well, it's your property, yes, but it's also within High Pines' community charter, subject to our covenants and bylaws. I've already noted 2 violations this morning." I glanced at Amy. Calm face, storm in her eyes. Karen tapped her clipboard like a judge delivering a sentence. "First, your fire pit, unapproved structure. All fire features must be gas-powered and enclosed in decorative housing." She said decorative housing like it was a sacred phrase. "Second, the forest. The rule book clearly states all properties must maintain a park-like appearance. You'll need to clear 40% of these trees for proper sightlines." I laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind that comes when someone says something so absurd, you almost want to applaud. "You want me to cut down trees that were here 100 years before your HOA even existed?" Amy spoke up, smooth as silk. "Ma'am, there's been a mistake. Our title search showed no HOA ties whatsoever." Karen's eyes narrowed to slits. "Mistakes happen. Probably your realtor's fault. Ignorance of the law is no excuse." She pulled a pink slip from her clipboard and held it out like a summons. "You have 30 days to comply. After that, daily fines." She placed it on the bottom step like she was planting a flag. I stood, the rocking chair groaning under my weight, walked to the edge of the porch. "Get off my land. You're not welcome here. Your rules are not welcome here. Come back, and I'll have you cited for trespassing." She didn't flinch. Bullies rarely do, at least not at first. She smirked and turned on her heel, marching back to her car with the stiff, self-important stride of someone convinced the world bends to their will. Amy slid her arm around my waist. We watched her disappear down the dirt road. The pink slip glared up from the step like a warning light. "She's miserable," Amy murmured. "She's a tyrant," I said, "and she just declared war." That cabin wasn't just a house. It was a promise I'd made to myself when I was a kid staring at a brick wall out the window of a cramped apartment. Years of saving every dime, every spare weekend building with my own 2 hands. Amy by my side, painting, sanding, keeping me sane. This place was supposed to be untouchable. We burned that pink violation slip in the fire pit that night, watched it curl into black ash, a tiny act of rebellion. We thought maybe, just maybe, she'd back down when she saw we wouldn't. We were wrong. At dawn, a deputy rolled up in a dusty cruiser. He wasn't here for a friendly chat. White gloves, thick envelope, gold-embossed law firm crest. Inside, a full civil complaint. 48 pages of HOA fury. It accused us of violations we'd never heard of, demanded back dues for years we'd never been members, and claimed, on the authority of a community expansion map from 1996, that our land had been absorbed into High Pines decades ago. 24. Hours later, we were standing in Judge Stone's courtroom. 3 minutes after she took the bench, her gavel cracked. Case dismissed, without even letting Karen's side warm up. We walked out with the whole thing dead on arrival. But I knew better than to think that was the end. Karen wasn't done. This was only her opening shot. And I was just beginning to realize how far she'd go to win a war I never asked for. The envelope sat on our kitchen table like a coiled snake. Amy didn't even have to open it to know it came from her. She slit it with my pocket knife, her hands steady in a way mine weren't. 48 pages of dense legal jargon spilled out, paperwork meant to intimidate, not inform. But Amy had spent years as a paralegal. She read through it with the slow precision of someone defusing a bomb. "It's a formal notice of annexation," she said, her voice tight. "They voted at the last board meeting to expand the HOA boundaries. Our land is now inside High Pines, according to this." She flipped to another page. "They're billing us for 5 years of back dues, plus interest and penalties." She slid the paper toward me. $9,000. I stared at it. Not just the number, but the audacity. The gall to think she could rewrite reality and send me the bill. This wasn't about money, it was about control. My fists clenched. I should go down there and— "No," Amy cut me off, sharp but calm. "That's what she wants. You lose your temper, she plays the victim. We fight smart. I'll go to the county records office tomorrow, pull every document on High Pines and our land." Her mind was already calculating, scanning for cracks in Karen's foundation. My role was simpler: secure the home. That night I bought motion-activated trail cameras and hid them around the property, by the driveway, the porch, the well house. If so much as a squirrel sneezed, I'd know. By the time Amy came home the next evening, her arms were full of photocopies. "It's weird," she said. "The 1996 map is on file, but the paperwork's sloppy, like it was thrown together in a hurry." I didn't know it then, but that sloppy detail would become the first loose thread in Karen's whole scheme. 3 days later, the hum came, high-pitched, invasive. A white drone hovered just beyond the tree line, camera aimed square at our cabin. I smiled and waved at it before calling the sheriff to report a peeping Tom. The deputy showed up, bored. "As long as it's over public airspace, there's nothing we can do," he said. An hour later, the drone was back. That night, I rigged a high-pressure nozzle to the garden hose. The next morning, when it dipped low, I hit it. A jet of water knocked it spinning back toward High Pines like a wounded bird. Small victory, but it felt good. Then came the sabotage. One evening, I went to get the mail. No water pressure. I opened the well pump's access panel. Someone had poured sand into the motor intake. It was deliberate, not a warning, an attack. While I spent a day dismantling and cleaning the pump, Amy was on the phone with a property dispute lawyer. His advice was simple: document everything, every incident, every interaction, every letter. A week later, the cameras caught them. 2 figures in dark clothes creeping out of the woods at 2 a.m., paint rollers in hand. They walked right up to our cedar siding and smeared on the ugliest HOA-approved beige I'd ever seen. I hit the floodlights. They froze. One was a loudmouth I'd seen at an HOA meeting. The other bolted without a word. I didn't chase them. I didn't need to. The cameras had it all in crystal clear HD. The deputy couldn't dismiss this one, but a week later he called back with the same verdict. Karen had produced a work order, claimed they were performing an aesthetic correction after. We ignored a notice. The fines kept coming, now for failure to maintain uniform paint standards. Neighbor Derek called that night, voice low. "She's telling everyone you're dangerous, that you're threatening the community. She's setting you up for the big meeting." Then the courier arrived. The lawsuit this time wasn't a letter, it was a brick of paper. 23 pages of lies demanding over $20,000 in fines, full compliance with the covenants, and payment of all her legal fees. Amy sat at the kitchen table, flipping through the pages. Her jaw was tight. She's trying to bury us in court, bleed us dry. But her eyes had that dangerous spark. I started looking into her real estate business, she said. She pushed her laptop toward me. A map appeared. Blue outline, high pines, red dots, properties she'd bought and sold in the last 2 years. They're all outside the HOA, Amy said. Distressed properties, dirt cheap. But look where the 1996 expansion puts the boundary, right around every single one. The realization hit me like a hammer. She's using the HOA to inflate her own property values, Amy nodded. And the residents are paying for it. We sat in silence, the weight of it sinking in. This wasn't about our fire pit or our trees. This was a con, a fraud. She was weaponizing the HOA to make herself rich. That night, we stopped thinking like victims. We started thinking like strategists. We could have walked away, used the fraud evidence to get our case thrown out, put up a fence and never thought about High Pines again, but that's not what Amy asked me that night. What about the next person she targets? She said quietly, staring out the window at the dark woods. What about Derek when his gnome offends her again? Or Mrs. Gable and her rose garden? I remembered Derek's story. An old woman crying as she ripped out roses her late husband had planted just because Karen's approved shrubbery list didn't include them. It made my blood run hot. If we walked away, we'd be no different than her, thinking only of ourselves while others lived under her thumb. No, I said, more to myself than to Amy. We finish this. We burn it all down. Amy's smile was slow, dangerous. I was hoping you'd say that. I've got ideas. We mapped it out over 2 hours at the kitchen table. 2-front war. The first was legal. We'd hand the fraud evidence to our lawyer, but hold the biggest piece back, save it for court. The second was a campaign of hearts and minds. If we could get the other residents to see the truth, Karen's power would crack. We can't put our names on it, I said. She'll sue us for libel. Amy was already typing. We don't need to. We just lay out the facts, no opinions. 14 distressed properties bought by Goodson Realty, all included in the proposed expansion. Estimated total value increase, over $2 million. And how do we get it to them? I asked. That, Amy said with a grin, is where Derek comes in. 2 nights later, I met Derek at a dusty roadside diner 10 miles from town. He slid into the booth, looking around like we were meeting in Cold War Berlin. This feels like a spy movie, he whispered. Am I going to have to eat a microfiche? Just a stack of flyers, I said, sliding an envelope across the table. He peeked inside. Whoa, this is big. It's the truth, I told him, and people need to see it. His paranoia melted into resolve. Consider it done. 2 days later, Derek called. It's chaos down here. People are standing in their driveways talking to each other, holding the flyers. The message board is on fire. Karen keeps deleting posts, but they pop right back. Up! You kicked the hornet's nest, man! Karen panicked, and when she panicked, she got sloppy. An official letter went out to all residents, calling the flyers anonymous slander from disgruntled troublemakers, and insisting the expansion was for the community's good. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Her denial only made her look guiltier. Then she came for us directly. Saturday afternoon. Amy was in her garden. I was splitting firewood. A black pickup with a lift kit roared up the driveway, gravel spraying. 2 men got out. One I recognized as the beige paint vandal, the other a stranger built like a linebacker. This is private property, I said, axe handle resting loosely in my grip. Turn around and leave. The paint guy smirked. We're here on behalf of the HOA's Architectural Review Committee, conducting a follow-up inspection. And he's your assistant? I nodded toward the mountain of muscle. He's security, the big man sneered. In case of hostile residents. Amy walked over, phone in hand, recording. You've been asked to leave. You are trespassing. The big man stepped toward me, puffing out his chest. "We're not leaving until we do our inspection." I didn't move, didn't blink. "Take one more step," I said quietly, "and I will defend my wife and my home. You will not like the outcome." For the first time, I saw hesitation in his eyes. But the painter's rage got the better of him. He lunged for one of my trail cameras. "No more of your little spy games!" I stepped between him and the tree. He shoved me. Hard. That was assault. He shoved again. His fist came up, and then a siren cut through the air. The deputy stepped out, hand on his sidearm. Within minutes, both men were in handcuffs. The cameras had caught everything, from Amy's phone and a hidden angle. Karen had overplayed her hand. It wasn't the kill shot we needed, but it was the turning point. The arrests sent shockwaves through High Pines. It's one thing to whisper about corruption. It's another to see the HOA's muscle hauled away in the back of a cruiser. But Amy and I knew Karen would try to spin it. She'd claim her volunteers acted alone, that she had no knowledge. It was good evidence, but not the kind that finished a war. We needed something bigger, something that didn't just show her hands were dirty, but proved the whole foundation of her case was built on a lie. One evening, Amy looked up from a pile of papers with that spark in her eyes. "What about Mr. Abernathy?" "The man who sold us the land?" I asked. She nodded. "You said he told you it would never be part of the HOA, that he made sure of it. If anyone knows the original boundaries, it's him." I hadn't thought of the old farmer in months. Last I'd heard, he was in his 90s. We found him in a quiet nursing home one town over, sitting in a sunroom with a thick history book in his lap. When we walked in, he looked up, his smile slow but sharp. "The cabin builders," he said. "Heard you're having a little trouble with the Queen Bee down at High Pines." We laid it all out. The annexation, the 1996 map, the harassment, the real estate scam. He listened without interrupting, his eyes narrowing. "When I told you that land would never be part of the HOA," he said, "I wasn't making a promise. I was telling you a legal fact." He leaned back and told us a story from the early 90s, when High Pines was nothing more than a few neighbors trying to keep the place nice. He'd been on the first HOA board, but even then, he saw the danger. He insisted on a permanent carve-out for his family's land, 5 acres that would forever remain outside the HOA's reach. It was voted on, recorded, notarized, and filed in 1994. Then he said something that made my pulse spike. "There is no 1996 expansion map, not a real one. If she's waving that around, she made it herself." Forgery. Amy's legal brain was already spinning. "But the forged one is on file at the county," she said. "It's her word against ours." Mr. Abernathy smiled. "Not if you have the originals." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small brass key. "In my room, under my bed, you'll find an old footlocker. Everything you need is in there." We opened it like we were disarming a relic from another era. Inside, the original 1994 hand-drawn map, crisp notary seal, every board member's signature. Beneath it, the meeting minutes, the vote that permanently exempted the Abernathy parcel. It was like holding a loaded weapon. Karen's entire case, her entire scheme, was now 1 week away from detonation. We left that nursing home not as defendants, but as executioners walking toward the gallows. The morning of the trial felt wrong. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before the sky splits open in a summer storm. Amy sat beside me in the truck, her hair pulled back, her dress sharp and simple. She looked more like a lawyer than half, the ones I'd worked with. On my lap, a slim leather portfolio. It felt heavier than the cinder blocks I'd used building our porch. When we walked into the courthouse, she was already there, Karen Goodson, holding court in the center of the lobby. Hot pink blazer, matching skirt, a smile sharpened into a blade. Her lawyer, Peterson, stood beside her with 2 massive rolling suitcases of binders, pure theater. Karen's gaze dropped to my small portfolio, then slid to Peterson with a smirk. I could almost hear the thought. These amateurs are about to get steamrolled. We took our seats. The bailiff called for order. Judge Marion Stone entered, a no-nonsense woman whose eyes looked like they could strip paint. Peterson launched into his opening statement like he was auditioning for a legal drama. High Pines was a peaceful paradise, he said, and Karen its tireless steward. We were the villains, hostile outsiders bent on undermining the community. Every word dripped with fake outrage. Then Karen took the stand. She spoke soft, almost saintly, as if she were a reluctant hero forced to act for the greater good. She painted our fire pit as a hazard, our trees as an eyesore, our behavior as aggressive. She even squeezed out tears when she described the fear she felt. Her finale was the map. Peterson rolled out the 1996 expansion like it was the Magna Carta. This, he boomed, is the official map filed with the county, clearly showing the defendant's property inside the HOA boundaries. Karen dabbed her eyes. We just want them to be good neighbors, she said sweetly. Amy's hand touched my arm. Let her build the pedestal, she whispered. The fall will hurt more. Finally, Peterson rested. He asked for a summary judgment. The judge turned to our lawyer, Ben. Your turn. Ben stood slowly, buttoning his jacket. The defense calls Mr. Davis to the stand. My pulse pounded as I walked forward. Ben started simple. How we bought the land, built the cabin, the first visit from Karen, the drone, the sabotage, the paint attack. Peterson objected on everything, but Judge Stone let it all in. Then Ben walked to my portfolio. Your Honor, the plaintiff's entire case rests on a single document, their 1996 map. We'd like to present a different map. He unrolled Mr. Abernathy's 1994 original right beside Karen's. Side by side, the truth glared. Ours had the carve-out for our land, the signatures of the full board, a crisp notary seal. Hers? One signature. Hers. Peterson froze. Where did this come from? He demanded. Ben's voice rang out. From the original HOA board member who created it, Your Honor. This is the notarized, legally binding map on file before the plaintiff's forgery. The air in the courtroom went still. Karen's smug smile cracked. But we weren't done. Ben laid out her real estate purchases, the expansion line surrounding them like a noose. He played the video of her men attacking me on my own property. By the time it was over, Karen's mask was gone. What was left was panic. Judge Stone didn't need a recess. Her gavel came down like a gunshot. Case dismissed, with prejudice. But she wasn't finished. She turned to Karen. You have falsified official documents. You have committed perjury. You have abused your position for personal gain. The court orders you to personally pay the defendant's legal fees and property repair costs. And this matter is being referred to the district attorney for criminal investigation. The sound of that gavel hitting wood was the sound of a kingdom collapsing. When the gavel came down, Karen didn't move, didn't speak. She just sat there, pale and hollow-eyed, like someone who'd been shot and hadn't realized it yet. Peterson was frozen too, jaw slack, as if he'd never considered losing. The binders stacked high on their table suddenly looked like the props they were, dead weight with no power. The bailiff called the next case, but no one in the gallery moved. They were too busy watching the Queen of High Pines crumble. We walked. Out without a word to her. Outside, the sky was still that perfect, cloudless blue. Amy's hand slipped into mine. The portfolio felt lighter now, almost empty. That night, the HOA held an emergency meeting. Derek called me afterward, voice buzzing with energy. You should have seen it, he said. Half the room showed up waving copies of the court order. They voted her out, landslide. She didn't even stay for the count. A week later, the state real estate board yanked her license permanently. The same smiling headshot she'd used on every Goodson Realty sign now sat in a disciplinary report under the words, "Revoked," for cause. The High Pines residents got a letter not long after, not congratulating them, but informing them of a new special assessment to cover the legal bills Karen had racked up before trial. Thousands of dollars. It was the perfect, bitter ending to her reign. Even in defeat, she cost them. But up here, on our 5 acres, life began to stitch itself back together. The ugly beige patch on our siding came off. I replaced it with fresh. Cedar cut and stained with my own hands. Our fire pit, still gloriously unapproved, crackled in the evenings, sending smoke curling into the cool air. The trees stood untouched, swaying in the wind like they'd been rooting for us all along. One night, Amy and I sat in our rocking chairs, mugs of coffee warming our hands again, just like the day this whole thing started. She smiled, really smiled, the kind that reaches the eyes. "We went all the way," she said. We had. And in the back of my mind, I knew something else. Bullies build their kingdoms on fear, but fear rots from the inside. It only takes one good push, sometimes from the most stubborn people they've ever met, to bring the whole thing crashing into dust. Peace feels different when you've had to fight for it. Before Karen, our mornings were just quiet, ordinary. But now, every time I step onto that porch, the quiet feels like a prize we earned. Scarred, maybe, but ours. We didn't just keep our land. We took away the one thing she thought was untouchable. Her control. The HOA meetings changed after she was gone. Derek told me people actually talked now, without glancing over their shoulders first. Mrs. Gable replanted her roses. The barky dog came home. The garden gnome, whimsical as ever, returned to Derek's lawn, this time with sunglasses and a fishing pole. It was small stuff, petty to anyone else. But to those people, it was a sign they weren't living under someone's boot anymore. Amy, and I never took credit. We didn't need to. We'd done what we set out to do, cut out the rot before it spread any further. And truth be told, anonymity suited us fine. We went back to our rhythms. I worked on small projects around the cabin. Amy dug deeper into her garden. Some days I'd catch her looking out toward the dirt road, a half smile on her lips. Not in fear, in satisfaction. One evening, as the sun dropped low, we sat by the fire pit. The flames snapped and popped, sparks rising into the dark like tiny fireworks. "You know," Amy said, "she'll tell herself for the rest of her life that we ruined her." I stared into the fire. Maybe. Or maybe she'll figure out she did it all by herself? We didn't toast to victory. We didn't need to. Winning wasn't the point anymore. It was knowing that if someone tried to come for what's yours, for what you've built with your own hands, you don't bow. Not once. Not ever. The seasons turned. The pines stayed standing. The air up here still carried that scent of rain on needles, like it had the first day we laid eyes on this place. Life didn't snap back to what it was before. How could it? We'd been through something that left marks. But those marks, they weren't scars we wanted to hide. They were proof. Proof that the quiet can be worth fighting for. That a home is more than lumber and nails. It's the promise you make to yourself and the people you love. We'd learned that bullies come in all forms. Some hide behind clipboards and covenants. Some weaponize law books and fake maps. But they all have one thing in common. They believe no one will stand up to them. And that's their weakness, because the moment someone does, someone's stubborn enough, angry enough, clever enough, they lose. I looked over at Amy one evening as the fire pit cracked and popped between us. She was leaning back in her chair, face lit in warm orange glow, a little smile tugging at her lips. "We're done with this, right?" I asked. She didn't even open her eyes. We were done the moment she realized we weren't afraid of her anymore. The flames shifted in the breeze. The trees rustled like they were agreeing. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel the weight of a fight hanging over us. We'd answered the question of how far we'd go to defend our own, all the way, and if anyone ever tried to test that again, well, some fences don't just stand their ground. Some of them bite back.